Hello, everyone. Welcome to another preview here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. I've actually gone and gotten the Essendon contingent from the content creator space. This might be the first time, I think, in a very long time, or as long as I can remember. I've got Rob from the Sash Pod with me. Mate, welcome.
Terry, thank you for having me. Long overdue, I think. Long overdue. Us doing some content together. I was saying to you off air how I have felt that despite the tradition between Essendon and Carlton, I feel like the rivalry has tapered off in the last decade or two. But suddenly there's a bit of spice in the air. There's a bit of flavour. Both sides are towards the top of the ladder, and it's exciting. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and keen to talk about footy and Bombers and Blues and this weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It has been a long time coming. I think we've timed this perfectly when both teams are going. We're going pretty well, both of us.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I'm a very pessimistic supporter. I'm sure a lot of your audience have been the same. When you struggle for so long, it's very hard to believe until it actually sort of happens. And even though Essendon is sitting second on the ladder, I reckon 80% of my audience and the comments I read are people going, "Oh, it'll fall apart soon. It'll fall apart soon. Don't worry, it'll fall apart soon." So it's nice to be positive and feeling good about the team, because I do feel good about Essendon at the moment. I feel like if we had this chat 12 months ago, I would have said it's looking good, but I feel like there's less buts at the moment for me with Essendon. So I'm up and about. I'm pumped for Sunday night. I almost had a crisis realizing that I didn't have my ticket organised, but thankfully that's okay. I've got my seat ready to go, so I'm going to be there on Sunday night. I'm sure you'll be too, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. You said something there that just made me smile. I just followed the Instagram page and I went and looked at one of your recent posts, and it was like literally 80% of the comments. I think it was the injury update
Yeah.
that you posted. And it's like I looked through the comments, and like, oh wow, like where's the belief? I mean, is that just scarring? Is that just trauma? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a very tortured fan base. What is it, 20 years without a finals win, I think will do that to you. And that's it. Like it's very hard to think it's real, because there's been so many false dawns, so many false flags. And until it's there, until the siren rings and we've won a qualifying or an elimination final, and then we're through to the next stage of finals, like it's going to be, most people aren't going to believe. Like, I still have supporters and friends of my own who watch the club every single week and they follow the news, and we'll go out and have a good win. We'll beat GWS off the park and they'll go, it won't last. It won't last. And I think that's just until we're good and we're there at the end of the season, I think there are just people who just won't believe, and they just won't believe that it's happening. There is some parallels to last season where we had a great start and then it gets this middle stage of the year, and you get a few injuries here and there and a few guys start to slow down a bit and you start to worry. And I think that's sort of where a lot of fans are, because in our last 3 weeks, the two sides we've beaten are the two teams on the bottom of the ladder, but it hasn't been very convincing. It hasn't been like, there's a 40-point win, let's move on the next week. And I think that those fragile fans, and I can be fragile as well, are very easy to wilt when, things are not certain.
Mate, we're having similar conversations on our end too. I mean, obviously we have to touch on 12 months ago, and we will.
Yep.
But post that, the run happens. We, go all the way to the prelim. No one saw it coming, I think. And I found this year, I mean, I still see the scarring come to light when we don't win convincingly. Or, I mean, we've had a few losses this year that have been disappointing. Probably the Sydney one was the shellacking. The Adelaide one hurts more and more as the season goes on, seemingly. But that trauma is still very much there, even though we've gone on and done the thing that we wanted to see the boys do and the club do. So I think that's going to take some time to go away.
Yeah. How do you feel? I mean, how do you feel you're going? How do you feel your supporters going with managing expectations? Because I can imagine that whilst the sensible supporter knows that it's not linear, but you make a prelim, suddenly I think everyone's sort of going, oh, well, the pass mark is now a prelim. Like, how do you think people are going managing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, I think we're going, I mean, in the context of this season, I think we're going okay with upside. In the context of season expectations, I think we're in a 3 to 5. I don't know how long the window will last, but I think once we made the prelim last year, I felt that we were then capable of potentially winning a flag. And I think as long as you feel like you're capable of winning a flag, you're in a window.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's going to last. I feel like we're in that window. I think the way that the list is going right now, then this season and next season in particular, we have the bulk of them already signed up. So it's a really crucial time right now. Cripps is in a really good spot in his career. And then, the younger ones are starting to really come into their own. So I'm optimistic that it's not about whether we can or can't win the flag. It's like, will or won't we? And I mean, it's all unknown right now, but I'm just here to enjoy it because it hasn't been an enjoyable experience for a long time.
Yes, no, I know very well. I've got some, good friends who are tortured blue baggers, and like, even though it killed me, I remember sending them a message to a few guys. I'm sure you might remember the old Blueprint podcast that no longer exists. A few of the boys used to that, and I sent them a message because they were up at the Brisbane game, and I saw the photo of them together, and I sent them all a prime message. I'm like, boys, I'm so happy for you guys. Like, obviously, I wanted the Lions to win, but I'm so stoked that you've got to have this nice little run, because I remember hanging out with those blokes when they were sitting there trying to review 100-point losses, 80-point losses, week after week after week. And I guess the funny thing with Essendon is, like, we never really bottomed out that hard. It's always why we've been this mediocre side. So we never hit that absolute rock bottom that I know you guys were at, 7 or 8 years ago. And I was like, I hope you see it one day. Like, I really do, because there are so many good people who've spent so much money, so much time, and it's like, I hope you just see it someday, Whilst we are bitter rivals and it's a classic rival and all that, like, it's nice seeing the teams who've been out of it for so long be back. Like, I'm not sure about you, but like, and like, I don't know how you feel about swearing on your podcast, but like, Geelong can get stuffed. The Sydney Swans can get stuffed. Like, can we get these sides out of the 8? Get rid of them. Let's get some teams we haven't seen for a while back up the top. Like, it's nice seeing Carlton up there. It's nice seeing Essendon up there. At least it is for me anyway. Like, I think it's time that we, turn it over a bit in the competition.
Yeah. Those teams can fuck off, to answer your question. Well, the Blueprint, that's, they are the OGs of Carlton podcast land. I used to listen to them before I started doing this while I was living away, and that would get me through those 100-point beltings back in the day. That's a really nostalgic time.
No, it was heady days. Like, I think, it might have been 2017. I think is.
Yeah.
Essendon played finals that year, and of course, blew up in an elimination as we do. And I can't remember where you guys finished, but like, I reckon I fielded a weekly message from one of the blokes on a Sunday night, just going, Rob, I'm quitting the pod. I can't do this anymore. I know it's good. I just can't do it anymore. And I just wouldn't respond, because I'm like, he'll sleep on it, and the next day he'll be like, I'm coming in. I got heaps I want to talk about, So, like, yeah, I do have a little soft spot there. Although, come Sunday, I'm going to hate you all. But I certainly there is a soft spot for those, tortured teams. Like, St Kilda's probably that other one as well that I do have a bit of a soft spot for. And I guess even North these days, where I'm like, it'd be nice for the people in my life who I know love those clubs is to see a little bit of something. Because, success is rare. Some people are lucky and they see it a lot with their team. Some see it once in their lifetime. We both have a mutual friend, Adrian, from the debrief, and it feels like their window's slipping away for them now, and that's a whole thing for them. And it's like, well, maybe this is our time to have that 5-6 years where, you expect to win most weeks rather than lose most weeks. At least I'm sure that's where you guys have felt this year. For us, I think we're still getting there. Like, I feel like if there is a window, it's only just opening now. Like, we're a long way off it being totally open still. Like, regardless of how this season plays out, I don't see us contending for a flag. But I do think we are a competent finals team, and I absolutely hope that we're a team who's going to be there past week one of the finals. So
yeah, I did my preview the other day, and part of it, I talked about the Bombers and my perception of what I see with the Bombers, and there are some similarities to Carlton. And what I mean by that is what I notice, and I don't see them the way that you will. You watch them a lot more in depth than I do, but there seems to be this renewed sense of collective resilience, and I don't know if that's just a newfound belief. Scott's there, game plan, but just there is this resilience to get through when the momentum's not going your way. What is the Essendon story from you?
Well, I mean, if you've been reading the headlines, they call it the Essendon Edge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term. We joke about it on my show, and we call it Edgington and Edge this and Edge that, and we have a bit of a laugh about it. But like year one of Brad Scott coaching, like year one of any coaching, you're rarely going to see a great deal. Like it's a lot of turnover, it's a lot of setting things up, but this season, I see a lot of what Essendon's trying to do, and I see a lot of what Brad Scott North Melbourne was like when they were good, which is that they are trying to become a hardened, gritty team who are hard to score against. That is the foundation of what Brad Scott's always been. He wants players who are tough at the contest. Let's face it, they're pricks of blokes to play against, and they shit you up the wall. And I think that's the direction that this is slowly going. Like, it's still got a fair bit, plenty of growth to go, but you think about like remember Scott Thompson used to play for North Melbourne, their defender, and just how every forward in the comp hated him, and that was just kind of their mantra. Like Michael Ferrito and those blokes, they were just tough as guts. They were so blue collar in the way they played footy, and they just kind of got it done. And I think that's where this sort of change is. He speaks a lot about professionalism, and that was our message this season and end of last season, because obviously, post this game last year, Essendon went like this, Carlton went like this. The front fell off our season, and Brad came out and said, this group need to learn to be professional. They need to learn what it's like to be a professional AFL player. The first thing I'm going to do is, instill their first proper off season that they haven't had for however long. And then it's going to be about being a professional week in, week out. So we've gone and had, one good preseason, and now it's all about him drilling that message. And you hear the players saying it now. Like at the start of the season, not so much, but now, you watch your little, 5-minute videos they do after the games, and you just hear the Brad Scott terms, about being professional, about, like you said, being resilient, week in, week out. That's what it's about. And look, I think it's getting there. The turning point for us was the Bulldogs game this year, because the first month or so, like we got some okay wins. We got a bit of luck with teams who didn't, take their opportunities. And it was the third quarter against the Bulldogs where, for the first time in my recent memories, the Bulldogs, who have destroyed Essendon, they were the team who kicked 22 goals in a row on us a few years ago. Like we've been their bunnies. We shut them out of the game and strangled them for a quarter of footy, and just the ball lived in our forward half. And I sat there at home watching, because I couldn't go that week, and I was like, what am I watching? Like, when have I seen an Essendon team do this? Because even when we had those good moments, 2021, 2019, 17 made finals, it was always a, very flaky attacking brand, run off the brilliance of a few players. But I was like, this is like a real tough, brand of footy that we're trying to bring here. We obviously beat the Dogs, and then we go on and start beating some teams. And, there's plenty of people out there who go, oh, you've only beaten one good side. You've only beaten this. And I'm like, well, we can only beat who we play. And we played a full strength Giants team in Melbourne. Luckily it was in Melbourne, because that obviously favours us. But just, they started well, and then slowly we just built our way into the game. And there's something about third quarters with Essendon this year. Third quarter, I think, is where we play our best footy. And again, just like shutting these teams out, and it's all built off defence. It's all built off pressure and defence, and that has not been something I don't think anyone has said about Essendon since 2000. So, look, it's great to see. We're still, growing into it, but this is the Brad ball, so to speak. That's what it's built on.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, let's touch on the last time we played, because it was round 13. It will be 12 months to the day soon, very soon, within the week. We've been doing a lot of reflecting. We just did a show on the Wednesday night, which we're filming this tonight, called Reflections. And I think the theme of the preview for me is looking back at the last time we played, because it almost forced me to, because I didn't reflect too much on it once we went on our run. Now this season started and I haven't really thought about it too much. There's been a bit of a reference point to the turnaround, but what do you remember from the last time we played from your end?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing I remember was Peter Wright coming back from a massive injury layoff and just hitting the ground running, which you don't expect generally. When a guy has missed 12 weeks of footy, you go, oh, well, his first game back is probably not going to be that good. I remember Peter Wright coming in and looking like he was at the top of his game, which he was that previous year in 2022. That was huge. The other thing was, and it was kind of a lead into some of the stuff that's happened this year, where it was the younger midfield brigade who, on paper, you go, oh, a young Archie Perkins versus Paddy Cripps. Well, Paddy Cripps is going to, destroy this young kid. He played out of his skin, had one of his best games of his career. Jai Caldwell, who was a young guy, was just pulling out of the midfield, getting it forward. And then I can't remember if it was the third or last quarter. It was one of the two, but we had this 7 or 8 minutes where we just went bang, 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 scored really quickly. And yeah, like it was a shock, because I didn't really think that the side was capable of that then. Sadly, that was where it all sort of finished for the season, to be honest. But those are the two things. It's those young midfielders and then Peter Wright having a big day out. They're my two biggest memories of it.
Yeah, the Bombers for some reason have had 2 games like that in my lifetime that I can remember, where they've just shaken the foundations of the Carlton Football Club. Yeah, we're in the wars. It was beyond sadness. It was beyond anger. It was a complete disassociation between fan and club. Like, we're all just lost souls, licking our wounds. The fan cams were.
Everyone wanted Vossi sacked. That was when like SEN went into absolute meltdown, because it was Voss out, and then I can't remember if you guys had a buy or not, but there was a little bit of a quiet window, and then the club was sort of like, no, we're sticking fat, and then it just turned around in the most incredible fashion. But it's so funny. It's such a sliding doors moment, because like if we had this conversation 5 minutes after that game and you said which side's going to make a prelim, I think most people say, oh, Essendon might go on and make a prelim. But the complete opposite happened, where one club blew up and then the other club on they went and ended up having a really successful year. So it's funny because of that like I do look at this week's game and like obviously I want to get a win, but there is part of me going, even if we don't, I know how much things can change from this point in the season. So it's the thing I've said to myself this week, because I'll be honest, I do feel like the Blues will win. We'll get in like predictions for later, but I am leaning towards the Blues this week. But if it doesn't happen for us, I've said to myself, well, I don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's still 12 more games before finals, and you guys are the proof. A lot can change.
Well, what have you seen from Carlton since that day? Like, what is it from the outside looking in? Like, what have we done?
I guess for me, it's I call them the no-namers, but the guys who aren't, your Kernos, your Crippses, your Mackay, the guys who I don't know, stepping up and suddenly playing really good footy. Like the two, like actually the one guy who I really like him. It's a shame he's not playing is Matt Cottrell, because he's such a blue collar footy player, not the most skillful player, but my God, that man works his ass off.
Yeah.
And as a very untalented footballer myself in my time, I look at him and go, that's my kind of guy, because he's your coach's award player. He's the guy that you know that Vossi would be like, follow what this guy does and we'll win game, because he just works his ass off. So guys like him, also like the growth of some of you sort of younger players as well, like DeConning obviously went to a new level. I mean, we always knew Walsh was going to be good. I'm trying to think who else there was in that list. There was someone else. I mean, Matt Owies, I think, has come along a long way as a small forward for you guys, and again, one of those sort of pressure players. I think that was it. It was the pressure guys for me, because I've always felt as an outsider that, you know, Curno's going to do his thing every week. Cripps is going to do his thing most weeks. Same as Sam Walsh, and great, but it's about, you know, it's the old bottom five. It's about those guys and what they're going to do. And for me, they went from just run-of-the-mill players to, oh my God, these are some really good players. You know, that was the change for me.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say those names, because I think for a long time, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I feel like I was manifesting and trying to will into existence that we were going to be good, because we had these names, the Wiederings, the Kernos, the Mackays, etc. And now we are lauding guys like Chincotta, Boyd, Fogarty. You mentioned Owies, Cottrell. And I think that's a sign of a Carlton that I haven't seen in a long time. We're not just trying to juice up our superstars. Like, yeah, they are superstars, but at the same time, I think we've finally grown out of that as a supporter base, because, I mean, we've lived through generations where, Favola's winning Coleman medals, but we're shit. So, yeah, I think that's part of the growth of the club. There's more of a humility around the club than I've ever seen before, which is the key. I thought it was the key last year. The key was, all right, you're in this pressure cooker again. Are you going to sack another coach, or are you going to hold firm and see it out? So it seems like we've learnt the lesson, but still so much footy to be played. So coming into Sunday, before we get into predictions of the game, what is the story of who's available, who's coming in, who's coming out from Essendon?
So the outs, so Mason Redmond strained a hamstring against the Gold Coast, so he'll be out of the side. There is doubt on Kyle Langford, because he had a hip pointer injury, which, having spoken to my, osteo mate, can, in some scenarios, just be a bit of a bruise and you move on, but in some scenarios, it can really sort of lock up your hip and can be something that you actually need to manage for a few weeks. So that's a bit at TBC, so we'll see what happens there. Guys who already weren't going to play, so Draper's obviously injured. Darcy Parish is out. He re-injured his calf, which is frustrating, so he'll be out for some time. The ins, Goldstein will come in, who's... Look, he's been pretty good. I think he's played his best footy. I think he's played his best footy when Draper's been there, though, because they've kind of got this, you've got the classy sort of ruckman in Goldstein to absolute chaos in Draper, and they kind of balance each out in a nice way. Goldie, when he's had to ruck solo, has been pretty soundly beaten. Like, obviously, North were always going to smash him up because he's an old North guy, but he kind of struggled against Richmond as well. The other in is, I expect an old blue bag, Will Setterfield's going to play.
All right.
Which is, so he's just come back from injury. He played a full game in the VFL on the weekend, so I expect him to come in, because one of the unfortunate things for us at the moment is that while our injury list isn't long, we've got a bunch of injuries in the same position, which is midfielders. So Parish is out, Hobbs is out, Setterfield has been out, and there's someone else I'm forgetting. But when you get them all in the one spot, you're like, oh God, that's annoying, as opposed to it kind of being spread. So I expect him to come back in, but I don't expect much, because essentially he's playing against the guys who prevented him from playing in the midfield for Carlton, where he wanted to play, because, they were probably better than him. whilst he's been good for us. So I'm not sure what he's going to do. If Kyle Langford doesn't play, Nate Caddy will come in for his second game. He was our pick 9 or 10 from last year. Looks
He's
like a
got it.
really,
Oh mate,
yeah,
he's got it. He's got it.
yeah, yeah. I think he does too. But a first year key forward, like
Yeah,
you're not expecting him to do a great deal. So great to see him if he comes in. But yeah, I think he's obviously a few years off being someone who can rip a game apart. So they're the sort of major ones on the injury front. There are some other people who are sort of long term outs that weren't going to be there. The guy who I actually think is one of our biggest losses at the moment is Xavier Dersma, who came across from Port, because he's played on the wing for us. He's been awesome. And in my opinion, and I've spoken about this a lot on my show, that the gap from him to our next best winger, I think, is like massive. Like, I'd probably say Nick Cox is our next best winger of the guys who's actually been playing there, and he's got a long way to go for mine. Whereas Dersma's been he's at one end, he's at the other, he's just running all day, in defence, up forward, taking marks, doing like everything that a really good winger does. In the last sort of few weeks where he hasn't been there, we just don't have much width going on. And we've seen a few sort of small forward players, like an Owen Davey Jr.'s played on the wing, Jai Menzies played on the wing, Nick Hines played on the wing, and he's actually been really good. I think he's actually played the best month of footy in his career. So he's probably the one coming in form. So, yeah, that's sort of where the injury list sort of lies at the moment. So I think the big one is going to be what happens with Kyle Langford, because he's, kicked our most goals this season, our in-form forward. If he doesn't play, I think it's going to be very hard for Essendon to win.
interesting. Yeah, Dersma is an interesting one. I'm a big fan of his. Always have been. I felt like he just started getting that trust and connection with his teammates. They started looking to him a lot more just before he got injured.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, that's great for us. We are coming out of the worst part, I hope. Touch wood, don't want to jinx anything, but we had the low point, which is, that everyone's got that point in the year where your injury list is as big as it is for a season. I'm hoping that that's behind us. The side looks so much different when Adam Sard and McGovern are there in the back line, and funnily enough, Lockie Fogarty in the forward line, because of the way he just pressures and locks the ball in our forward half. He really leads that. So now that those guys are back in, the structure looks better. And then I think we've learnt something. I think Sydney was the humbling we needed, because the midfield looked a little slow at times, little one-dimensional at times. So all of a sudden, Carlton now has a tagger. Alex Chincotta's a tagger, and Zach Williams is now playing as a forward. We would usually be dropping one of Kemp, Cowan, Boyd, Chincotta to fit in Zach Williams in the back line. So it's something that we've seen from Carlton that's been a bit different. I don't know how long it's going to last. If it does last, it's looking good so far. But I think for us, the only conversation you could really have for inclusions, there is an argument to be made that Pitternet could come in.
Yeah.
But I think De Koning's fine on his own. And then there is an argument to say Jesse Motlop could come in for his first game for the year, but he's just not in form. He's had, a game and a bit in the VFL. Maybe he comes in as the sub. I'm not sure. But for the most part, we won't be changing the team drastically.
Okay. Is Fantasia going to play? Will he play, do you think?
I think he will. My gut feel says he will. I think the last few weeks he's actually started to have a bit of a pulse. I expected a small forward when he came to the club. I was told that you'd be lucky to get his body right, and if you get his body right, you've got a guaranteed starter in your first choice team. The body's fine. He just hasn't been able to find his place yet. But I do feel like his last few weeks, he's had a bit of a pulse. He's not playing a small forward role. We like to roll up an extra into the further up the ground, so he's not playing deep. I don't know exactly what it looks like for his role. We're still trying to figure it out on this side of the fence, but he's definitely not playing the role that he played at at Port and the Bombers.
Yeah, he's a very very skillful player, but I would label him as someone who's a very uncontested footballer.
Mm.
Like at least it was for us when things were looking good, he was getting on the end of it, you know. But then when you had to go find your footy, he just sort of disappeared. But obviously that's 6 years ago, Maya, 7 years ago. It's been a long time. So you'd think maybe he's fixed that up, and obviously this third club getting another shot. So yeah, I don't know if he'll get a frosty reception from Essendon supporters. Like, I mean, there are some people who hold on to those grudges from people from different teams. Like, I was definitely more upset about Sardi going than I was Fantasia. So,
Fair enough.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the faithful do if they get near the ball. So,
Yeah. Well, I remember 2021 Sard's first game against you lot. There was the booing, and then the Carlton cheer squad would lead the cheering, and that sort of happened. That's been happening for the last few years. I don't know if that happens again on Sunday, but we've now got the woof for Adam Sard every time he kicks the ball. That's really taken off.
that's nice.
He's something else. We love him.
He's a good player. No, he's a very good player. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of coping going on when he was gone, and people trying to justify different people playing his role. But he was a great player. I mean, now it's been enough time that we probably don't need him because we've filled those sort of positions in. But then again, with Mason Redmond going out, you're like, gee, Sardi'd be pretty handy this week.
Yeah,
so, but yeah, I always felt his defending was underrated. Like everyone always talked about him offensively, but I was like, God, he actually defends really well. So
very high level defender. I think it was just banter that we were getting that he wasn't a defender, but very high level one-on-one defender. Even the way he reads the play, peels off when he needs to. Yeah,
because the sort of chat for us was that he left, and then Nick Hind came over from St Kilda. And Hind had a really good first year off half back, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's already better than Sardi." Then it kind of blew up, and he played some really poor footy. And then it's funny because Nick Hind is now like, I guess you call him a small utility. Like, I think when you say utility in footy, we always assume, we think of like a Mitch McGovern type sort of player who can play half forward, half back, usually in a sort of key position kind of role, but Hind has basically played halfback, wing, forward pocket, forward flank, like just about every single position you can as a small player in Essendon's team. And he's kind of been our little Mr. Fix-It in the last month, which has been interesting. And yeah, he's played some brilliant footy. So yeah, I guess if we were going to do pick a side here, maybe I'd pick Hind on a forward flank, and I'd happily put Sardi on the back flank, and they can play against each other.
They can play against each other. Then we'll know once and for all. That's interesting. So this Sunday, how does it play out? What are the storylines that emerge? What happens?
I think for me with Essendon, I think a lot's going to come down to how well our midfield is able to go, because we were pretty poor against both North Melbourne and Richmond. And in both those games, we won the game because of how good our defence was. North, I think we all know are butchers of the footy, and they've got a lot of guys who win a hard ball, but then they'll just shank it all over the place, and we cleaned it up and won the game there. Richmond, they won a lot of the ball out of the midfield because Nankervis dominated Goldstein. The one place in the ground they had a healthy list was their mids, and our younger brigade and, less options just didn't really have much of an answer. And then, again, it was reliant on our defence to play really well, rebound it out of there and go on and win. Gold Coast, I don't think they were as bad as they were in the previous two games, but we didn't stop any of their mids. Like Anderson, Miller, Rowell, I'm pretty sure all had 28, 29 plus, and then goals, and his goal assist across a lot of them. So I think that is really it for us, is that if our mids are able to level it or win the midfield fight and not let Carlton mids get off the leash. And the one I do worry about is Sam Walsh this week. He's the one who really sort of scares me at the moment. I think we're in with a good shot because our defence has been great. Our team defence has been great. We can generally score when we get it forward as long as we're not spraying it like we did against the Suns. But But that's my big concern because our clearance numbers and our stoppage numbers have just died in the last sort of month or so. So
Interesting.
that's the biggest question mark for me. And 12 months ago, Archie Perkins plays a brilliant game on Paddy Cripps. Is that what they do this week, or is it Sam Durham who played on Bontempellier in the season, and Bontempellier is one of those guys who averages 30 and a couple of goals against Essendon in his career, and then suddenly Bontempellier doesn't have an impact for the first time ever in that matchup. So I feel like one of those two blokes is probably going to go to Cripps. I'd be pretty shocked if they sent Will Setterfield if he played. But I look at Sam Walsh and just his abilities just to get around the ground, spread from contest, and just be involved. I wonder how we're going to deal with that. Like so Jai Caldwell ran with Liberatore back when we beat the Dogs and did a good game, but I think he's a very different player to Sam Walsh. And yeah, I worry for his ability to just get lots of footy and just be a great player. That's, I think, my big concern.
Yeah, right. I saw a pretty mature Carlton last week. Almost looked like we managed the game professionally for the first time in a long time. Away from home, big. It was a good win. I don't know if it was the greatest win, but it was a really important win and one that I hadn't seen in the way that we did it for a with this group for a long time.
Yeah,
midfield battle. I mean, I think at any point in time we can have we have this ability for 7-8 minutes to completely dominate. At stoppage, we've shown the ability to do it. Our scores from turnover has been a narrative that's been a highlight for Carlton fans and mainstream media. It started off really well in the season. We lose a few key backs down there. It goes nowhere, and then it sort of returns a bit last week. So I think we're as balanced a side as I've seen this season, probably. I am confident. I'm confident that we're more than capable of winning the game. But I think with a game like this, there's always that external spirit you can tap into and find something.
Yeah.
And so, as confident as I am, I know that there's a little something in there that I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, yeah, I think we should be okay. But it's a rivalry game.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I'm confident enough in Essendon's structure and the way they set up now that if you guys are off, if people are turning the ball over, that like we can and we will punish you. But like you said, if you're able to have that period of time where you click, I worry about our ability to stop that, because in past when we've had those windows where things haven't gone well, like it was absolute when we played Port, earlier on the season, we literally couldn't fix it. But guys like Sam Draper can be a real X factor at a centre bounce. For all the stuff he cops from a lot of our fans, Darcy Parish is one of those guys who he's just a seasoned player, and that you can kind of rely on him to be there. Whereas your Caldwells and your Perkins and Durhams just haven't been in this comp long enough yet that you can just rely on them for 20 weeks at a time when they're fit. Our kind of go-to guy has been Jake Stringer, where he comes into a centre bounce. But there was a really interesting one where there was against Gold Coast where Matt Rao went and stood like 20 metres away from where they balled it up. And he just stood there and was looking at Jake Stringer being like, you either come stand next to me or you don't. And Stringer didn't know what to do, because he's like, I'm here to like be this impactor, but my man's just standing all the way over there. Like, what am I supposed to do here? So I do worry about our ability to stop that, where if you guys just click and you're in the zone and Cripps and Walsh and DeConning and whoever else is there in the middle is just firing, and you're not hacking the ball, that we might not be able to stop it. Like, I mean, I guess we could probably speak about like, who knows what's going to happen between Ben and Harry Mackay. Like, it'll be hilarious if they don't play on each other to start, but I think we all assume they will.
Well, I don't. The thing is, you guys don't want Ben Mackay out of your D50. We want him out of your D50. But Harry plays further up the ground. Harry pinch hits in the ruck. So I don't know how much we'll see them on each other.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, yeah, Ben's our now, our anchor defender, like, just the deepest guy. But he struggles generally against the more mobile forwards. So, like, if Charlie wants to sit in the goal square, sure, like, that works out well. But, if we were playing a traditional one-on-one, you obviously, like, it's Ridley to Curnow is the better matchup for us. So, like, they're going to kick goals. Like, Charlie's always going to get his couple. I assume Ben's going to get a couple as well. I guess it's whether or not we can stop the other players from having a big impact, and whether we can stop, your midfielders kicking goals and everything like that. Because, it's almost a par now for a defender to go, all right, Charlie's going to kick 2 or 3, and that's just kind of par for us. We just don't want it to be north of that.
Yeah. Look, we're both going to tip our boys to win. So why don't we go for a storyline that emerges from the game?
All right. A storyline that emerges from the game. It's interesting. So when I do my predictions, we give a score, we give a most goals, and we give a best on. That's usually how we do it. But I'm gonna go Essendon by 3 points. It's going to be an absolute nail biter. Where I think Essendon will have a really big third quarter. That's what we do, and then it's going to be us trying to hang on in the last quarter and hopefully hang on. My best player, look, I've tipped him most weeks, and I'm usually correct, but I'm just going to have to say Zach Merritt, because he's absolutely flying this season. When he plays well, generally we play well. And most goals, I think I just have to pick Peter Wright again, because he did it 12 months ago. And I guess the storyline will be Essendon's defence again, I think, because I think you'll still win more ball out of the midfield, but the story will be about Ben Mackay, about Ridley, about Laverty, Heppel, all the guys back there, and just how good they were. And it's about Essendon punishing you on turnover and from one end to the other. That's my prediction. What about you?
Okay. Blues by... I've had the number 27 in my mind for some reason. So I'll go Blues by 27.
Not bad.
I think Adam Sard will be best on ground. I can see that his third game back. He looked a little bit more like Adam Sard last week. And after a 10-day break, I think he'll be fresh and at his best. So a nice 25 possession game from Adam Sard. And then I've just got visions of Matt Owies kicking 4 or 5. I don't know why.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He loves it.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting one, that, because one of our sort of storylines this season is how, because of that wing issue that I spoke to you about, we have seen Jake Kelly lining up on a wing at times. Now, Jake Kelly, for mine, is a very, very good lockdown defender on small forwards, and he's done a lot of good jobs against some of the best small forwards in the comp. He absolutely killed Toby Green. He's taken scalps on Charlie Cameron at times. All the absolute gun small forwards. But for whatever reason, we had him playing in this defensive wing role because he's good at setting up in defense and dropping back and being a defender. But he kind of sucks kicking the ball. Let's be honest. So if Jake Kelly actually plays in the back pocket, whoever he plays on not going to touch the footy, basically, because he'll just kill them out of the game. If Jake Kelly plays on the wing, then Matt Owies can probably kick 7, to be honest. So that's kind of the question for me. Is it goes, all right, is Kelly going to defend, or is he going to play on the wing this week? Because I love him in defence, because it means we don't have to worry about the best small forward generally. So, it's an interesting one. I wouldn't be shocked if Owies kicked a few goals, especially if Jake's hanging out in the wing. So,
yeah, I got to tell you, done previews with opposition fan content creators before. None of them have gone as long as this. I've really enjoyed it. It's been good.
I like to talk, and I do like to talk about Essendon. So it's why I do this. It's funny enough. So last Monday, I missed my first Monday show in, I reckon, 6 years, because we had some COVID at home, so I had to stay home and look after my son. So one of the boys filled in, and my missus was like, "Oh, it must have been really nice, knowing that you didn't have to talk about the Bombers this week." And I was like, I was sitting there on Tuesday being like, I have so much to discuss that I just haven't got out talking about Essendon. So yeah, I love talking about the Bombers. I love talking footy as it is. So it's nice to have a long chat. And if you want to do a review on Monday after the game with one of us really sad and upset, the other one up and about, sure, we could do that too. So
Okay. Put on the card.
I'll say that now, but if you beat us by 10 goals, I'm probably not going to come on. So
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's why we're doing a preview.
yeah.
While spirits are still high.
Yeah. Exactly.
Before I let you go, what's the story with the Sash? How did it start? Where are you at? Give us the rundown.
Yeah. So the Sash started in 2017. I was working with some people and we were working on a soccer podcast. There was a studio available, and a bloke who you and I both know was like, hey, I'm going to do a Melbourne podcast there. And I was like, oh, fuck you. I'm going to do an Essendon podcast. At that point in my life, I only had one close mate who actually I've like followed the Dons with, like, because a lot of my friends, like I've got a lot of friends who have no interest in footy. They're all muso heads, no interest in footy. And I was like, I didn't know who to have on. So I did it in the first year. I did it with a guy who I used to work with. And he was great. He's an older guy, like radio dude, really, really good. After that season finished, we didn't work it together anymore. And I was like, I want to keep doing this, but I didn't have anyone to do it with. And I kind of put out a call to a couple of friends. I'm like, who knows some Essendon nuffies? And luckily I was put in touch with a few really good blokes. And then I gave them the pitch and said, this is the show. This is what I want to do. Come on board. And then since then, most weeks during season, I've done a Monday and Thursday podcast, a review and preview. The odd interview here and there with guests and bonus content. The occasional time with the club, invite you down, you get to do a bit of content with them, which is really cool. And I think our first show might have had 50 listens, which I reckon was most of my extended family and friends. And these days, like, the monthly audience of listeners is sitting around the like nearly 20,000 individuals.
Wow.
Which is insanity, which is absolute insanity. Like I go look at the report and I'm like, is that right? Are they actually individuals? And like all the people I know in Radio Land, they're like, no, those are real numbers. And I'm like, do people actually care what I have to say that much? But I don't know. There's something about when your team's not doing well that it's nice to talk about it. And there's always enough storylines with Essendon, ups and downs every single year. And, we've been growing our YouTube channel now. Like I've properly been doing the YouTube video podcast on Mondays this is our second season. I think we've got a bit over 2,000 subs on there, which is nice. And then I do a little post-match reaction video, which, I stole the idea from our dear friend at Saints TV. Can't say mine are as good as his, but I like to do a little 5 minutes there after a game, which is nice and fun. And yeah, that's kind of the story of the Sash, really. I'll plug something else. So in my day job, I do work in Media Land. So I produce the NITV footy show at the moment, kicking back with Gilbert McAdam. So it's not a preview review show. It's like a long form conversation. There's a little bit of current chat, but most of it's not. And yeah, Wednesday nights, 7:30 on NITV, and then it's on SBS On Demand. There's also a podcast version that's longer as well, and I think we've done like 14 episodes now. So that's been pretty cool. Like had Ernie Dingo on, had Kevin Sheedy on. Who else was that? Had Nicky Winmar on. We've had some really, really, really good names. And actually, no, this is what your audience will love. Next Wednesday, actually, let's see if you can guess who it is. He's an ex-Blue Bagger, 200 games. I'm pretty sure he's played 200 games for the club. Can you guess who he is? He's post 2000 player. And he's going to be on our TV show. He played 202 games.
Why do I think it's Ryan Houlihan?
It's not Ryan Houlihan.
It's not Ryan Houlihan. Okay.
Not Ryan Houlihan. Was he? I would call him a forward, but maybe he was a bit of a utility. He probably played a bit of forward and back. But I think of him as a forward, but you guys might not.
202, 203 games forward. Utility. Jared Waite?
Nah, not Waite. This clue might give it. He took some pretty big hangers.
Oh, Andrew Walker.
Yeah, Andrew Walker.
Ah.
So yeah, filming with Andrew Walker next Wednesday. Let me just check my.
Took the greatest mark of all time.
Mate, he did.
Absolutely the greatest mark of all time.
On Jake the stepladder Carlisle, who
Yep.
went and joined St Kilda and was still a stepladder, funnily enough. So for your audience, that'll be on TV the 25th of June, and available for podcast as well. So Andrew Walker will be on. He seems like a great bloke in the calls we've had on the phone. So really looking forward to that one. So yeah, plug for my TV show.
Sounds good. No, that's cool. No, it's the space is growing. It's been a wild journey. I've been in the game for 6 years, just over 6 years now, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it all goes. I don't know where it all leads, but yeah, I think something you said there about just being somewhere with your own supporters after wins, or I think after losses, it's more impactful because you have somewhere to be that people are feeling what you feel. When you're feeling good, it's easy. When you're not feeling good, it's hard to find someone that's feeling that same emotion. So yeah, I can certainly relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm sure you're the same where, you know, when things are good, and I mean even things are bad, but you get a lot of those messages from people who go, "Hey man, I was overseas or I was on a bus or whatever, and I was really flat after we got thumped by whoever, and just listening to your show just like changed my mood." We do a thing at the end of our Monday shows where the segment's called Hot Takes, and basically people send in voice notes, and it's mainly just swearing, songs, and like dick jokes, basically. But last year when things were really bad, I had so many messages when we'd have a shit game, the Giants would roll us by 100 points, and then people are just sending in these absolutely wild opinions, and everyone's like, you know what, I feel good now. I feel good now because some guy sent in a poem about Essendon that he wrote down and he sang it out loud, and that was enough to get us up and about. So, yeah, look, it's awesome to have these communities. You and I are obviously blessed because we support two of the biggest teams in the game, and there's a lot of people, and it's nice when things are good, and hopefully, it'd be great to see both the Bombers and the Blue Baggers deep into finals this year, and who knows, maybe squaring off in a final at some stage would be pretty special. I think
it would be. It'd be a tough one for the heart, but it's I think it's important for footy.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It definitely is. It's time for some of the bit of the turnover to happen. Like Richmond's had their time, Melbourne's had their time. All right, let's time to pass the baton on. It's time to pass the baton on. So. But look, thanks for having me, Terry. It's been absolutely brilliant being on the show, and hopefully to all your Blue Abroad audience, if they've got friends and family who follow the Bombers, I'm sure they do, and if they're not across the sash, send them my way. I'll look after them, don't worry. And yeah, would love to have a few more people listening and watching on the YouTube as well.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Well, we'll be in touch. I'm not wishing you good luck, but good luck for the rest of the year, and maybe we'll see you in finals.
Sounds good, mate.